Hello, my Bandicoot crew, and welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be me discussing if Crash and Spyro were destined to meet one another. This is your first time coming to the channel. I release Crash Bandicoot content every weekend. We discuss lore, theories, news, we do tier lists, we do interviews, and I also have a Crash Bandicoot podcast. If any of that sounds at all interesting to you, please consider subscribing because you will get Crash Bandicoot content in your YouTube feed every single weekend. I've made Crash and Spyro collaborative videos in the past, but this banner that I unlocked in Crash Team Rumble really got my theory juices churning, and like I saw this image and I just went with it, and I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if this actually occurred within the Crash Bandicoot franchise? If an unmutated Crash Bandicoot and a newly hatched Spyro the Dragon actually interacted with one another prior to any other event in the Crash Bandicoot series? Like, they were so young they don't even remember it, so they were destined to reunite and meet one another again. This could either be in the Dragon Realms, that could be a red jewel, or it could be in Crash's world, and it could just be the red gem. Crash is questioning whether it's a Wumpa fruit, in his mind anyway, and Spyro has no idea what's going on. He looks very derpy. So I wanted to take it one step further and explain every interaction that Crash and Spyro have had with one another, in continuity and outside of continuity, and see if these two characters were actually destined to meet one another from birth. So I'm going to be using my timeline that I've used in the past. I'll link it in the description or a pinned comment if anyone wants to see my timeline and why I think it is what it is. But we're going to just go over where Crash and Spyro actually interact with one another, and if I think it adds towards the overall narrative of the story. So you have the flashback tapes, Crash 1, the flashback tapes for Coco, Crash 2, Crash 3, and the Insane Trilogy. None of this really has any Spyro in it whatsoever. In the original releases, you had Spyro demos on Crash 3, Crash Team Racing, and Crash Bash. But as far as the game story goes, Spyro did not appear in any of these games. So Spyro's first canonical appearance in the Crash Bandicoot timeline would be in Crash Bandicoot 4. And if we want to be super technical, it isn't even Spyro himself. Spyro appears two places in the game, one as a little floaty here, and then again he appears as a balloon in one of the parades they're having. Now, if you want to take this as Spyro appearing in the series, that's fine, but this is more of a meta appearance because it's showing that Toys for Bob worked on Spyro games, because there's also a Skylander in this parade, and Skylanders are not in the Crash Bandicoot series either. So if you want to take it as Spyro, I'm not gonna, tell you you're incorrect, because technically, yes, it is Spyro. But as far as the narrative of the story goes, both of these are Easter eggs, and they have no bearing on the actual story that's progressing. So Spyro has not yet appeared interacting with Crash. So then we go to Crash Team Racing, and Spyro doesn't appear in Crash Team Racing. Spyro appears in the nitro-fueled Grand Prix, so that doesn't count in the timeline yet. So then we move on to Crash Bash. You do not see Spyro in Crash Bash, nor do you see him in the Wrath of Cortex. And the first interactions we get with Spyro are in Crash Twin Sanity. Spyro shows up in the 10th dimension trying to collect the gems that were stolen from him by the evil twins. It's never shown them stealing the gems and the other treasures from Spyro in-game, but this is the Hero's Tale version of Spyro, and they're using his model, and he's toasting entropy, embryo, and engine. He's blasting them with fire to get his treasure back. So, how many games are we in now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's the 10th installment in the series, continuity-wise, and Spyro's only just now appearing. But even though Spyro has just appeared in the game, I don't really count this as Crash and Spyro interacting. Let me explain. Spyro is there, 100%. I'm not denying that that is Spyro. This is Spyro the Dragon. But Crash does not interact with Spyro whatsoever. It's just a dragon blowing fire on his enemies. And if we go back to the timeline here, Crash actually has interactions with dragons multiple times in the series. He will have interaction with dragons here, he will have interactions with dragons here, and he will have interactions with dragons here. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in 5 games, he encountered dragons 4 times. I'm aware that this is an image from Crash Team Rumble, but the point stands because it's the same assets from the game. Crash interacted with dragons in Crash Bandicoot 4. So, does Crash know the names of these dragons that he's interacting with? No, he just sees them as dragons. So in Crash Bandicoot 4, Crash sees dragons. In Crash Bash, Crash actually rides a dragon in the minigame Dragon Drop. He's in a medieval setting, and he's throwing gems at different targets to get more points. So again, he's riding another dragon. And then in Crash the Wrath of Cortex, he's actually chased by another large dragon in the level Wizards and Lizards. So as I said, you can argue with me if you want, and go in the comment section, tell me that I'm wrong. But up until this point in the timeline, we got up to Twin Sanity. This is the first appearance of Spyro himself being in the game, but Crash does not really interact with him. And because Crash has seen dragons in these previous games, for all we know, Crash can just assume Spyro is just another random one-off dragon, not like a character that he is friends with. So then we go to Entrance, the Huge Adventure. There is no Spyro here, nor is there Spyro here. And in the Game Boy Advance version of Crash Nitro Kart, Spyro actually is a playable character. However, Spyro is only available in the arcade mode of said game, and it's non-canon. So Spyro is a raceable character, but he's not in adventure mode, so there is no story beats with him in it, and he's not in the console version of the game. So to me, this is 100% non-canon. It's just a nice Easter egg throwing Spyro into the game. Which finally brings us to our first official crossover with the two characters in Crash Bandicoot Purple or Spyro Orange, also known as Crash Bandicoot Fusion. And this is 100%, this is them meeting for the first time. Like, there's no way denying this. This is their first canonical crossover. The thing that makes it really awkward, though, is this game, they put no effort into the story whatsoever. They aren't like, oh, a portal ripped open in the sky because Ripto is doing dark magic over in his realm and it's causing a space-time continuum and there's going to be a big explosion and Spyro fell out and now Spyro and Crash need to join together to save both dimensions. There's none of that whatsoever. It's just Cortex and Ripto team up and they try and confuse Crash and Spyro by having Spyro's enemies dress up like bandicoots and Crash's enemies dress up like dragons, so the two of them are clearly brain dead, right? And they're gonna attack one another, and that's how the story started. They had a Molotov cocktail battle on a bridge, and then the game just continued on that way. So, no, they didn't use Crash's power-ups, they didn't use Spyro's power-ups, they didn't try and integrate the story into it. They literally just had Crash and Spyro throwing Molotov cocktails at one another. Yeah. So I wanted more from that. We have little baby hatchling Spyro, and little unmutated Crash. That brings us next to the Imaginators game. So they finally crossed over. We finally got an adventure with them. They defeated Cortex, they defeated Ripto, and then they went back on their way. So then, Tag Team Racing, no Spyro. Boom Bang and the mobile game sequel, no Spyro. The Radical games, no Spyro. Also, in between here, there's supposed to be Mutant Island. No Spyro. And then we get to Skylanders Imaginators, which, if you are part of the Spyro fandom, you are aware that that is a different Spyro from a different time frame / universe / continuity. It's never been 100% clear on what's going on with these different Spyros, but Crash Bandicoot being the same Crash in every game and then crossing over with each different Spyro, it just muddles things up and makes it even more confusing. But we have Skylanders Imaginators, and there is once again a crossover with Crash and Spyro, but this is not the same Spyro that we've been talking about from the start of this video. So this does not, again, count as another interaction with Crash and Spyro. Which will bring us down to our last line of the timeline. We have the mobile racing games, which Spyro was not in. Then we have Crash on the Run, the Grand Prix, and then I don't have it listed here because it's a new game. Newest, as like the newest of the franchise, we have Crash Team Rumble. So, Crash on the Run, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled Grand Prix, and Crash Team Rumble all had canonical crossovers with Spyro. So it's finally all coming together. These characters were meant to cross over. They were meant to meet one another. Now this is entirely up to debate. You can tell me I'm wrong if you wish. This is the first instance of classic Spyro having a different design. I am very confident that this is meant to be classic Spyro, but there are people who claim that this is a different Spyro because his horns and his facial structure and his tail, and there's just little minute differences to this Spyro. I have always taken this as classic Spyro, though. So, Dr. Entropy, the female version, used a portal to open up to come back to battle Crash again after the events of Crash Bandicoot 4. And after she was defeated, the portal remained, and somehow or other, Dark Spyro was able to hijack that portal and come to Crash's universe. Now this is where it gets muddled again. Dark Spyro was originally a form for the legendary version of Spyro. That's why other people think that this is not confirmed to be classic Spyro. So either there is a dark version of classic Spyro now, or classic Spyro is fighting legendary Spyro's dark form. I haven't played the legendary series, so I'm not way too up on all the lore of there, but I don't think that's correct. I think that the Crash on the Run team just created a new evil version of Spyro for this game. So Dark Spyro came to Crash's universe, and Spyro follows behind him to help the heroes defeat Dark Spyro. So while you don't get to play as him, Spyro does come into this game, and he helps behind the scenes, and Crash, Coco, and Spyro defeat Dark Spyro. So could these little whippersnappers meeting back in their youth foreshadow the events all the way to the Dark Spyro, where they had to work together and defeat him? Because the next two appearances, while yes, they are canon, it's hard to place them. The only thing we really know about the Grand Prix placement is that it doesn't take place during Crash Team Racing. Crash Team Racing's story mode takes place way up at the top of the timeline, and then the Grand Prix, they can either all be bunched down at the bottom of the timeline, or you can scatter them throughout where you think they do like officially fit. Like you'd be like, oh, well, it fits in between this game and this game. I personally think that they all just happen at the end of the timeline because this is how the franchise is structured now. We're moving on and we are in present time. So I believe that all of the Grand Prix take place at the end of the timeline. And Spyro and friends come over and they just have some fun racing. And there's not really any world-ending scenarios happening. So Crash and Spyro met up in Crash Bandicoot Fusion, and they met up in Crash on the Run, and they saved the day. And then Spyro just came and had some, you know, go-kart fun with Crash. Which brings us to our last appearance, and the whole reason that I made this video, Crash Team Rumble. I got the awesome banner of the little hatchling and the unmutated Crash. That's actually the banner that I use in the game. And this is very, very, I keep saying the word muddled, but this game is very, very hard to place in the timeline because the comics that we get make it seem ambiguous, but then you also have Cortex meeting Ripto for the first time, and you have female Entropy hanging out despite the fact that male Entropy isn't around, and she's opening up time portals. So I personally think right now, until we get any more clarification, that this is happening at the end of the timeline along with the Grand Prix, because they stated that it is the Wumpa Festival and it happens annually. So there's no reason to think that either this different seasons are happening at different times throughout the timeline because you're supposed to have an annual event, or they're all at the end of the timeline. But again, there's no like gloom and doom plot to take over the multiverse in this game. This is just a run around, grab some Wumpa fruit. So it's similar in a sense to Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, where Spyro just came and he's hanging out. That's what's going on here. He came here and they're collecting Wumpa fruit. There's no end of the world threat. There's no universal threat. They're just having fun. And then just to wrap up this video, if you play Spyro, the Eternal Night, the third part of the Legendary series, you can see a cameo of Crash Bandicoot frozen under a sheet of ice. Like I said, I'm not very much into the Legendary series, so I don't know much about the lore of it. I just know that, in my opinion, this is just an Easter egg, and this doesn't really go against anything continuity-wise. If you guys want to assume that this is canon, then I would say way as far as you can go into the timeline when Crash Bandicoot decides to retire from being a hero. He gets teleported and frozen for the rest of eternity in this dimension. So Crash has technically encountered every version of Spyro. And that, my friends, will be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I taught you all about Crash and Spyro's destiny to meet. And we will see you in the next video. I hope you have a great night. Take care. Have a great one.